Former Vice President Joe Biden offered a message of hope and unity over the 4th of July weekend. In a video posted to Twitter, Biden focused on racial inequality, saying despite America's deep divisions, the United States still can live up to its founding principles of equality.
American history is no fairy tale. There's been a constant push and pull between the two parts of our character. The idea that all men and women, all people are created equal, and the racism that has torn us apart. We have a chance now to give the marginalized, the demonized, the isolated, the oppressed a full share of the American dream. We have a chance to rip the roots of systemic racism out of this country. We have a chance to live up to the words that have founded this nation. This Independence Day, let's not just celebrate the words. Let's celebrate that promise. Commit to work. The work we must do to fulfill that promise. Remain locked in the battle for the soul of this nation. But believe me, truly, it's a battle we can and we will win if we act together.
Alicia, if you look at that campaign video from Joe Biden and compare it to President Trump's two speeches over the weekend, it distills perfectly the way the two of them are looking at this movement in the streets of the country since the killing of George Floyd in Minneapolis. You had the president focusing on what he called bad, evil people who are tyrannizing the country, pulling down statues and looting stores. And you had Joe Biden looking at the larger message of the vast majority of those protesters, of those demonstrators, asking for an end to systemic racism and looking for racial equality in this country. Boy, those two speeches boiled it right down.
You see a contrast both in substance and in style. You know, we often talk when we have this conversation about the culture wars or America's history as though it is something that is only in our past, when, to your point, we're very much seeing this play out in real time. There are Black Americans taking to the streets who feel that they are fighting for their lives, and that message is echoing across the country. We also have this ongoing conversation about who is truly free in America. I mean, you and I have been following the story about this federal judge who has ruled that migrant children need to be let out of detention facilities, family detention facilities, because there is a concern over outbreaks of COVID-19. So this conversation about who is free in America is very much ongoing. You see Joe Biden in that ad stepping into that conversation, talking about racial equality, grappling with a lot of this at a policy level. But you also, Willie, see a stylistic difference. You see a recognition of a country that is in need of healing, in need of unification. And that speaks directly to what many perceive to be the former vice president's greatest stylistic strength. This is a person who's experienced tremendous grief, tremendous loss in his own life, who has what many perceive to be a deep well of empathy. And that is the strength that his campaign is hoping to rely on to create a very, very sharp contrast with this president in the lead up to November.
Jonathan Lemire, the 4th of July is always a good moment to pause in any campaign year and see where the race is. And I think you saw two speeches that sort of indicated where it was. You saw the President of the United States talking about angry mobs trying to wipe out American history, overturn the American Revolution, comparing what he called the radical left to Nazis, fascists, and communists defeated by America in generations past. So where really does the Trump campaign believe they are right now? Where does the president believe he is in this race against Joe Biden right now?
It's such a study in contrast to further that point. Also, I think part of the argument that Joe Biden has made throughout this campaign, and is really doing so now, is just sort of acting and looking like Americans are accustomed to from our president. While Donald Trump seems to only be interested, his critics say, in governing a small portion of the electorate, his base. And that's where the campaign is right now. As we've been discussing on this show, particularly in the last couple of weeks, everything they're doing is a base play, with the latest being this idea of heritage and statues and Confederate soldiers. And yes, and as part of this Mount Rushmore speech, the president proposed a national garden of American heroes, and they run the gamut of American life, different eras and demographics and what they mean, and politics and science and so on. But he's leaning into the idea of protecting these heritage, whether it's the Confederate generals on bases or statues throughout the country, which seems to be so remarkably out of step from the energy that we're seeing in the streets, and have for more than a month now after the death of George George Floyd, where the president, as a Republican strategist put to me recently, just seems, one sympathetic to the president, said that Donald Trump just seems so completely out of step with what's going on in this country, both with racial justice, but also how fearful Americans are with this pandemic. We're seeing some adjustments. For instance, we all know about his rally in Tulsa, Oklahoma a couple weeks ago that was indoors, drew a very sparse crowd from what he wanted. The president's announced his next rally. It'll be this Saturday in New Hampshire. It's going to be outdoors at an airport hangar. There's more talk of masks. Still no sense of social distancing, but attendees will recommended to wear a mask. Being outdoors perhaps will help. According to scientists, the virus, of course, spreads not quite as easily. But the president and his team, as a final point, they know right now they're losing. They know they're down. It seemingly every week brings a wave of battleground state polls that show them down. They feel like they've got time to make this up, particularly if the economy recovers, but that recovery is endangered by the virus surging back. And what they're right now is they're leaning on the only thing they can do, which is try to play to the base, turn them out, excite them, and get that 38-40% of voters to turn out at a huge rate, while hoping the rest of the country, those that likes Joe Biden, turns out a far less of one. That's a risky gamble, but it's the only play they've got right now, Willie.
Coming up, our next guest says America is not living through one crisis, we're living through 5. Anand Giridharadas joins us with his new column next on Morning Joe.
Thanks for checking out MSNBC on YouTube, and make sure you subscribe to stay up to date on the day's biggest stories. And you can click on any of the videos around us to watch more from Morning Joe and MSNBC. Thanks so much for watching.